Good afternoon. My name is Barry Soltani, and I am co-president of the Honors Council and co-chair of the Dr. Henry L. Jansen Last Lecture Series. It is my distinct pleasure to open today's event. The Dr. Henry L. Jansen Last Lecture Series was founded by the University Honors Program in 2006. In this series, distinguished faculty members are given an opportunity to answer one question in the form of their last lecture. The premise is simple. If you were given one final opportunity to speak publicly on the things that matter to you most, what would you say? What knowledge is most worthy of being passed on? The potential outcomes of an inspiring and wise professor are profound. In fact, we've all had one. That one professor who changed you, the way you think about a certain topic, or even about life in general. The Dr. Henry L. Jansen Last Lecture Series very much mirrors what SDSU's Honors Program is all about. The University Honors Program requires students to reach beyond the bounds of the traditional classroom and engage with the big questions of life, questions that matter. Rather than make simple declarations, we ask ourselves, what kind of world do we want to live in, and what difference can we make? It is in this spirit of curiosity, imagination, and wisdom that I welcome you to the Dr. Henry L. Jansen Last Lecture Series. I am now pleased to introduce Dr. Jeffrey Chase, Dean of the Division of Undergraduate Studies, who will say a few words of welcome.
It's my honor and distinct pleasure to welcome all of you. It's great to have you here, and I want particularly to thank those of you who came from off campus today. It's really important for us to have you here, and we're grateful to you for making the effort to be here. President Weber, who's being honored today, has often said that San Diego State University is not in the community, but it is of the community, and I couldn't agree more. What we do on campus matters, but we're all connected, and our lives are inextricably tied up with yours, and yours with us. Today's event is a celebration of Stephen Weber and of our honors programs and of our community. It is an opportunity for us to take time to listen, to learn, and to reflect. On behalf of the San Diego State University Honors Program and all of the honors societies listed in your program, all of which enrich our campus, welcome to this wonderful event. And now let me introduce one of our outstanding honor students. There are many here, but I'm going to introduce one of them, Levi Lentz.
Good afternoon. My name is Levi Lentz, and I'm the Campus Engagement Coordinator of the University Honors Program Student Society and the co-chair of the Dr. Henry L. Jansen Last Lecture Series. This is an exciting project for us, and we are pleased to be able to honor Dr. Stephen L. Weber. Both students and colleagues nominated Dr. Weber because of his many accomplishments, the intellectual energy he brings to his position, his commitment to the academic community, and his willingness to engage in pressing issues that face all of us. This is a wonderful honor and a testament to his distinguished career as a scholar and an administrator. We are pleased to have with us today former recipients of the award. As I call your name, will you please stand? Please hold your applause until everyone is introduced. Dr. Henry L. Jansen. Dr. Nicholas Genovese. Dr. Patricia Huckle. Dr. Anne Charlotte Harvey. At this time, I have the pleasure of presenting Provost Nancy Marlin, who will introduce our honoree.
When Steve Weber retires this summer, he will have completed 15 years as president of San Diego State University, precisely 15 years, because he wanted his retirement date to be the anniversary of his start date here at San Diego State. I've been fortunate to have served as provost for all but the first 2 years of his presidency. Consequently, I've spent a great deal of time working with Steve, usually seeing him on a daily basis, sometimes multiple times daily. It's been both a professional and personal joy to work closely with someone who is so dedicated, smart, hardworking, forward-looking, and fun to be with. Typically, though, we've been so focused on the 18 tasks in front of us that many of us collectively are all working on simultaneously, that I really took time to note the import of the individual's decisions that were made as we went along the way. But reflecting back, it's obvious that those individual decisions were indeed very critical. Let me share with you one such story and decision. Several years ago, and this will be a situation that some of you are familiar with, our program in northern Cyprus was attacked by some members of the Greek American community, led by someone who was then on the CSU Board of Trustees. These demands that we cease our program there, to me, were a very high-stakes test of academic freedom, and I kept reiterating we were neither pro-Turkish Cypriots nor pro-Greek Cypriots. We were there for educational purposes. Cyprus is a particularly valuable location for our students studying international security and conflict resolution because it has the atypical profile of being very conflicted but very safe. The controversy about our program continued to escalate with presentations at the CSU Board of Trustees meeting, screenfuls of email that many of us were receiving about atrocities, interactions with the State Department, involvement of our own students and faculty who wanted to support the program, and increasing coverage from the national media. In the midst of this turmoil, a highly respected and very well-intentioned person came to Steve proposing a political compromise. Steve's response was calm, thoughtful, and unambiguous. He said that although such a compromise would be helpful politically, he could not accept it because it would not be in the best interest of San Diego State University students and faculty. It would not be in the best interest of San Diego State University and faculty. That's just one exemplar of the amazing and principled leadership of Steve Weber, leadership that has been in the best interest of San Diego State University faculty and students and has enabled us to develop into the magnificent university that we are today. I'm honored to present to you this afternoon's speaker, my wonderful colleague and friend, President Stephen Weber.
Let me begin by thanking the Honors Council for the opportunity to speak this afternoon, though the title last lecture is a bit of a misnomer. Susan and our two sons would assure you, I think with affection, that this is not likely to be my last lecture. I've spent much of my life thinking about, admiring, and supporting excellence. I think about it somewhat differently than many. Hence, excellence might serve as a good topic for these remarks. Let me begin in the most pedantic way possible with an etymology of excellence. We know the word to be a noun referring to the state or fact of excelling, the possession chiefly of good qualities in an eminent or unusual degree, surpassing merit, skill, virtue, worth, etc., dignity, eminence. In this sense of the word, our good hosts, the Honors Council, might be said to possess excellence. But if we follow the word excellence back to its Latin roots, we find it derives from excellentia, which itself derives from the Latin verb excello excellere, meaning to excel or climb higher. This fundamental distinction between excellence as a noun and excellence as a verb makes all the difference. Understood as a verb, excellence is not something we are, it is something we do. You cannot be born to excellence, nor can it be conferred on you by others. It must be earned. I believe in excellence as a verb, as the human struggle to climb higher, to see farther, to think more deeply and more inclusively. This is what excellence is all about. Not about elitism and privilege, but about engagement, daring, and hard work. We philosophers are more about questions than answers, so let me start with a big question. When did our human climb begin? Certainly before San Diego State was founded in 1897, before our Declaration of Independence, before medieval clergy labored over ancient manuscripts, before the Great Wall, before the Roman Forum, before the foundations of Persepolis were laid, before the pyramids, before our ancestors' cave drawings at Lusseau, before primitive tools, before Lucy walked the plains of Africa about 3.5 million years ago. In a sense, our climb began somewhere in Africa when we swung down from the trees. But in another sense, it began long before that, before we were chimpanzees, before we were primitive mammals, before we were amphibians emerging from the swamps, before we became fish 510 million years ago. And we still have a long way to go, past vertebrates and invertebrates, past algae, past bacteria, down to complex molecules. Let's stop there. We could go farther back to the formation of heavy elements in exploding suns, but we only have 40 minutes. Suffice it to say, our climb began long ago. I like the somewhat romantic way that my favorite writer, Nikos Kazantzakis, puts it. Blowing through heaven and earth and in our hearts and in the heart of every living thing is a gigantic breath, a great cry. Plant life wished to continue its motionless sleep next to stagnant waters, but the cry leaped up within it and violently shook its roots. Away, let go of the earth, walk. It shouted in this way for thousands of eons, and lo, as a result of desire and struggle, life escaped the motionless tree and was liberated. Animals appeared, worms making themselves at home in the mud and the water. We're just fine here, they said. We have peace and security. We're not budging. But the terrible cry hammered itself pitilessly in their loins. Leave the mud. Stand up. Give birth to your betters. And lo, after thousands of eons, man emerged. The human being is a centaur. His equine hoofs are planted in the ground, but his body from breast to head is worked on and tormented by the merciless cry. He has been fighting for thousands of eons to draw himself like a sword out of his animalistic scabbard. He is also fighting, and this is his new struggle, to draw himself out of his human scabbard. Man calls in despair, "Where can I go? I have reached the pinnacle. Beyond is the abyss." And the cry answers, "I am beyond. Stand up." We can trace our lineage as far back as we want, to Neanderthals, to Australopithecus, to tree sloths. My point is not to talk about evolution, about which I know little, so much as to say that we have been doing excellence, which is to say climbing higher and reaching for the pinnacle, for a long time. Second question, where did our human climb begin? Well, we have had many beginnings. Humanoids seem to have begun here, Agriculture began in several places. Wheat and barley in the Near East between 11,000 and 9,000 years ago, maize here between 11,000 and 6,000 years ago, tending sheep and goats here about 10,000 years ago, cultivating rice in Asia only 9,000 to 7,000 years ago. Cities began here. The earliest mathematics we know of began here, around 3000 BC, when the Babylonians and Egyptians began using arithmetic, algebra, and geometry, and was enhanced with the invention of the zero here around 500 AD. Writing began here and here. I'm looking at the screen. There we go. Good. And here. One more. And one more. And here. Where's my fourth one? Yes. We cannot forget our own folks that did this. What we recognize today as major religions began in many places. Buddhism began here. Hinduism here. Judaism here. Taoism here, Christianity here, Shinto here, Islam here. A literally cool walk began here and ended here over 15,000 years ago. Here we go. Took a while. Good. Others seem to have set out from here and voyaged to here, and maybe even on to here. Epic nautical voyages began here with Columbus in 1492 to discover a, quote, new world. And here in 1519 when Magellan circumnavigated the globe. Notice that our world for the first time is beginning to be knit together. More about that in a moment. Finally, my favorite, universities began here in Bologna in 1155. All of which is to say, our climb did not begin at any one place. You have to see the whole board. Realize that the whole globe is in play, different places taking the lead at different times. My list is debatable and surely too Western-centric. But my point is that the geographic front line of our human adventure shifts through time. It is as if the glow of human excellence emerges, brightens, reaches new heights, and then unsentimentally moves on. Any one expression of excellence has a half-life, uses up the available vision, talent, energy, and then reaches up for higher. I believe the cutting edge of human excellence is now in the process of departing these United States. But that is a different lecture, and since this is my last one, we won't go into that now. It is all a matter of climbing higher, moving from algae to flatworm to possum to. Sometimes we gain a handhold in Egypt, sometimes a foothold in China or in Persia or in Philadelphia. Each are precious, each moves us higher, each recedes as new heights are sought. Third question, what is our climb of excellence all about? Was it all for this? About 3.5 billion years of evolution and ascent, all for us. No offense, but probably not. But in another sense, it was. On a much shorter time frame, we can see traces of the climb of excellence in our own lives. Certainly in our parents who worked and struggled so that we could be here, and in our grandparents who might not have known what they were struggling for except for better, whatever that might turn out to be. That is why many of us have gathered in this great university, to fulfill the inchoate dreams of Australopithecus. The climb is not about us as a terminus so much as an opportunity. We are the latest generation of life's soldiers. We have powers and capacities that even our grandparents could never have imagined, let alone the thousands of human and non-human generations that preceded them. Thousands of generations climbed before us, thousands more will succeed us. But this is our moment on the mountain, our chance to stretch for excellence, our opportunity to climb higher. Fourth question, toward what are we climbing? Got me. The French philosopher Teilhard de Chardin argued that matter has obeyed from the beginning the great law of biology, the law of complexification. Over thousands of years, this process of complexification leads to increasingly complex molecules and finally to the single cell that marks the beginning of life. From this, he inferred that life is the rise of consciousness. Teilhard then ventures an extraordinary thought, that the history of the living world can be summarized as the elaboration of ever more perfect eyes, the ability to sense more and more over greater and greater distances. It is, I think, an interesting idea that over eons of struggle, life has developed increasingly sophisticated sensory capacities, that as new senses have evolved, the breadth and depth of our receptivity have been enhanced, that to see is simultaneously to be enriched. As Teilhard puts it, to see more is really to become more. To see more is really to become more. Deeper vision is really fuller being. Fuller in the sense of becoming more connected, more complex, more conscious. We humans are seers par excellence. Seeing has evolved in almost unimaginable ways. Even the hawks that soar over our mesa cannot see as we do. Our vision sees through time and space. Those beautiful clear eyes of the hawk pale when compared with the satellite dishes that dot the roofs on our campus. Last year, when introducing our Kyoto laureate, Isamu Akasaki, inventor of the blue LED, and I'm sure some of you were there for that session, Vice President Scott told us that the most primitive eyes that still roam our Earth are those of the horseshoe crab. Now, our most advanced eye, Hubble, orbits 347 miles above that same globe and looks out billions of light years across space and time. Non-biological senses have now linked us with humans all over the world. Satellites place us with the flip of a smartphone in Libya, Cairo, Beijing, or Christchurch, New Zealand. What extraordinary vision. These are not victories simply of biology and technology, though they are surely that. Teilhard de Chardin imagined the culmination of this evolution as what he called a nous sphere from the Greek word nous, or mind. Just as a biological network grew to embrace our globe, so too predicted Teilhard, a network of minds would evolve. As early as 1947, Teilhard imagined our tiny Earth, this blue disk which we can now see floating against the void of space, becoming self-conscious, a developing network of thought which would be the ultimate expression of Earth's evolution. As he put it, outside and above the biosphere, there would emerge a nous sphere. The Earth is literally becoming aware of itself through us. For many years, our climb of excellence was unconscious, propelled by biology alone. Now, after Darwin, the climb has become self-conscious and increasingly self-directed. For many years, we could only generate the energy to lift ourselves up by imagining that we were climbing toward a summit, that somehow, somewhere, our climb would finally seize upon an as yet unglimpsed pinnacle. Now I think it is increasingly clear that we are climbing toward higher, propelled more by the ascent itself than by any imagined terminus. It pleases me that those who framed our Constitution sought to form not a perfect union, but a more perfect union. Fifth question: what does the human climb of excellence require of us? First, we need the discipline to acquire the needed tools. The climb does not begin until we can discipline ourselves. Perhaps to climb higher, we need to learn languages, or mathematics, or communication skills. Before Picasso could paint Guernica, he had to do this, and this, and this, and this. We need to have foundations in introductory biology and chemistry to learn the features of living organisms and molecules before we can learn about molecular biology, before we can join the biotech revolution. Similarly, we need the foundation provided by calculus and physics, along with the creativity of engineering design processes, before we can pioneer new advances in wireless technology. We have to toughen ourselves, acquire the muscles that will be needed for the ascent. There are no helicopter rides to excellence and innovation. Think again of the difference between excellence as a verb and as a noun. Verbs require muscles, not pedigrees. So we have acquired the tools, we have paid our dues in hard work. Then what? Next, we need the restlessness to not settle for the status quo. It is hard to master the status quo, and tempting to stay there when we have. Perhaps you know everything we can teach you about biology. We have people in this room who are trying to learn things that no one knows about biology, struggling to actually extend our human grasp and climb higher. Nietzsche speaks of this in his three metamorphoses, which for our purposes could be three stages of excellence. The first level is the camel. The camel is a beast of burden that acquires and carries the lessons of others. What is difficult, asks the spirit that would bear much, and kneels down like a camel waiting to be well loaded. The camel is a necessary stage on our climb. First, we have to learn the accumulated wisdom of our ancestors. Then comes the lion, who throws off the burdens of others and strikes out on its own. In the loneliest desert, however, the second metamorphosis occurs. Here the spirit becomes a lion who would conquer his freedom. The lion symbolizes the necessary act of rebellion that must precede the ascent and all true excellence. Nietzsche's lion symbolizes the courage needed to leave the familiar behind, to get out of our comfort zone, the daring to throw the established aside, and to set out for unknown heights. Finally, the way is open for the third of Nietzsche's stages, the child. The child is innocence and forgetting, a new beginning, a game, a self-propelled wheel, a first movement, a sacred yes. For the game of creation, my brothers, a sacred yes is needed. Nietzsche's child symbolizes the pure innocence of creativity, the innocence that does not know that it can't be done, the innocence that opens itself up not only to new answers, but to new questions, and consequently to new heights of innovation and creativity. So, we need discipline, daring, and creativity. What else? We need to understand that we are not chosen ones, that the struggle preceded us and that it will succeed us. We need to recognize that the glow of excellence is not ordained to shine from us. Others have led before, others will lead in the future. More demanding, we need to understand that higher does not ultimately require a summit. The mountain against which excellence pits itself is infinitely receding. Each conquered peak gives way to further challenges ahead. We must continue to pull ourselves up knowing that the climb is never finished. We strive for higher, but can never achieve the top. If we imagine that the top is within reach, we delude ourselves with false optimism. If we imagine that higher is not possible, we delude ourselves with false pessimism. The key, as Albert Camus says so well in his myth of Sisyphus, is to know that the top is not attainable and to strive for it nonetheless. You will remember that Sisyphus' offense was one of hubris, of imagining himself equal to the gods. His punishment was to eternally roll a huge boulder up a mountain, only to have it fall back as he neared the top. Camus writes, Sisyphus, proletarian of the gods, powerless and rebellious, knows the whole extent of his wretched condition. In our terms, that there is no reachable summit. It is what he thinks of during his descent. The lucidity that was to constitute his torture at the same time crowns his victory. The struggle itself, and now I'm quoting again, the struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. We need to know that to the degree we have played a small role in the ascent during our moment, we have been privileged. And finally, we need to recognize our responsibility to step aside when our small portion of the ascent is complete. Here again, Nietzsche says it well. I teach you the overman. Man is something that shall be overcome. What have you done to overcome him? All beings so far have created something beyond themselves. And do you want to be the ebb of this great flood and even go back to the beasts rather than overcome man? Man is a rope tied between beast and overman, a rope over an abyss. What is great in man is that he is a bridge and not an end. What can be loved in man is that he is an overture and a going under. Sixth question, where do we join the climb? You have to commit yourself. You have to place a bet. The bet is your life and energy and caring. There are many false lights. Unfortunately, the glowing filament of human ascent does not come with a label. For me, I place my bet on universities. As we saw earlier, there was a time when excellence was glowing around campfires, then in villages, then in ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, perhaps the Roman Forum, medieval churches. But I think that in our time it glows in and through universities, which is why I chose to place my small bet on the academy. Advice from an old man. Find the glowing filament of excellence, that place and effort in which the human struggle is being advanced, and put your energy there. In the end, only that will matter. When I was younger and even more foolish, I used to think that intelligent people were in universities. Ipso facto, if you were not in a university, you must not be very intelligent. Part of the pleasure of my present work is that I have the opportunity to meet and know extraordinary people of intelligence and caring beyond the walls of academia. people who have placed different bets than mine, and through those bets have extended the filament of human innovation and excellence. People like Irwin Jacobs of Qualcomm, Greg Lucier of Life Technologies, and David Valladolid of Piquet, to name just a few of the local ones. It has also been a great pleasure to come to know some of those heroes who are colleagues at San Diego State. People like Mike Eichler and his consensus organizing, Eric Frost and his visualization lab coordinating worldwide humanitarian relief. Eat your heart out, Teilhard. Bill Tong and his lasers, Robbie Gottlieb and her bioscience colleagues facilitating new vaccines, Joe Johnson and his National Center for Urban School Transformation, Karen Emery and her work in Africa, Fred McFarland and his work in Afghanistan, Wendy Mariyama and Helen Shirk, who are pushing the limits of design and imagination. My list could go on, but you have your own list, and it is every bit as good as mine. The important point is, whether you are an academic or not does not matter. Whatever your passion, find the glowing filament of excellence and blend your energies with it. Do not confuse the destination with the journey. It is the journey that is important. The destination will change. It is the journey that perseveres. The destination is disposable. You may commit your energies well, and history will note that you have founded a shining city on the hill. But your life is no less noble if you offered energy to the filament and misread its direction. The question is, were you seeking a path upward, trying to advance the human climb? The ones who can grasp the sweep of history and choose to advance it, they are the heroes. The ones who abstain are an embarrassment to the algae in our family tree. Which brings me to another thought. Excellence is not about the mountain, it is about the climber. That is why floating up in a balloon does not produce excellence. That is why you cannot cheat excellence. The effort of climbing higher enables the climber, brings out the best in the climber. No, let me say it another way. Puts in the best in the climber, develops the best in the climber. Understand, the climber is not only you and me singly, but the long effort of many generations represented by Kazantzakis' cry. The obstacles change, the mountain changes, the climber evolves, growing stronger, seeing farther, thinking more deeply. The obstacles are important not in themselves, but because they are opportunities for human growth and development. No obstacles, no growth, either on the individual level or the collective one. Overcoming obstacles, be they prejudice, poverty, disability, or countless other challenges, is what excellence is all about. That is why there is more excellence in an inner-city kid overcoming bad schools than in a privileged one graduating from a prep school. So too, in our human ascent, overcoming obstacles provides occasion for our collective growth and development. Obstacles like disease, hunger, failed communication. Martin Heidegger quotes one of Friedrich Hölderlin's unfinished poems. Quote, "Much has man learned, many of the heavenly ones as he named, since we have been a conversation and have been able to hear from one another." And Heidegger then reflects on this and says, we, mankind, are a conversation. The being of men is founded in language, but this only becomes actual in conversation. We are a conversation. That always means at the same time, we are a single conversation. Conversation and its unity support our existence. End of quote. Almost without exception, the human ascent is a communal one. We do not climb alone. We are an amalgam of those who taught us, those who assist us, and those who will carry on when our legs give way. Do you think you climb without assistance? When did you invent the language needed? Were the mathematics your creation? When did you capture fire in internal combustion engines or perfect the vaccines that keep you alive? We all travel pathways cleared by others, if only to get to the point where we can strike out on our own to conquer new heights. Our myths of rugged individualism to the contrary notwithstanding, the climb of excellence is communal. You and I walk this road together, not only with one another, but with our ancestors and our heirs. Closer to home, that is the lesson of San Diego State. We climb on the shoulders of those who came before. We will be followed by generations of students, faculty, and staff. They will face challenges we cannot imagine, but they will care no less about excellence and making a contribution to it. The first day I stepped foot on a college campus, I declared my intent to be a philosophy major. My mother's well-founded fear was that I would never leave the university. Now, as a 51-year senior, in my 102nd consecutive semester, I am finally about to graduate. None of us have the privilege of walking this road forever. All of us have the satisfaction of extending the path and knowing that others will carry on after we are gone. Final question. What lessons are there for us in the climb of excellence? I am inspired by our journey from the plains of Africa, by the knowledge that the journey began long before we swung down from the trees and walked upright on the savannah. And most of all, by the belief that the journey is not yet over, that the climb continues. I believe with Nikos Kazantzakis that the greatest human responsibility, literally to be answerable to, responsibility to be answerable to, is our responsibility to those who climbed before us, who won these heights for us, and to those who will take up the climb beyond our ascent. That is why I became an educator. There are many honorable paths upward, but for Susan and me, it has always been the path of educare, to lead forth. For me, the climb has always been more important than the summit. Indeed, I do not believe there is a summit, only higher. Together, we have climbed a bit at SDSU, but clearly the climb is not finished, nor do I believe it can ever be. The question is, are we capable of sustaining the climb in spite of reverses? Capable of the discipline and the hard work needed to advance, even if we know the summit is unattainable? I believe we are. If you want to join me in celebrating the verb excellence, look for it in the human struggle. Look for it in persons of color, in immigrants, in gays and lesbians, in people who have overcome adversity. Look for it in our guardian scholars, and in people like our veterans who know how to commit to something beyond themselves. Look for excellence in our artists, our entrepreneurs, our athletes, and our international students, all of whom have the courage to take risks. There can be no excellence without risk. I also believe that the greatest human satisfaction comes from having participated in the march of human progress. In my case, through education and encouraging diversity. I came to San Diego in Southern California believing that the future was being invented here and wanting to make some small contribution to that ongoing invention. That is how I would like to be remembered, working with great colleagues in a place pregnant with possibility to move the human ascent onward and upward. Thank you. Thank you, Henry.
I now move to the mic.
Yes. I'll stay right here.
The thing that I've just given to the president is something that is tangible, and we hope will let him remember us. We have a plaque that hangs in the Honors Council room, and all the names of all those who have given lectures in this series have been placed on that plaque, and yours is already there. That is so we remember you. I had in mind at this point that I would say something about what history will declare as your legacy. That fits under the notion of hubris. At 2 o'clock this morning, I gave up because I could not condense what I wanted to say within the time limits that I have. And there are a lot of people out there who will make sure that's a fact. So, for the moment, I ask the privilege of revising and extending my remarks in other venues and say to you, we thank you very much. And we'll remember you, and we owe you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Very nice of you. Thank you. Thank you.